In 1953, 3 scientists at a New York City laboratory painted cigarette tar onto the backs of shaved mice. Within weeks, tumors began to form. The results were unambiguous. Cigarette smoke caused cancer. The data was clean, replicated, and damning. The men who funded that lab were not scientists. They were the presidents of America's largest tobacco companies. And when they read the report, they didn't warn the public. They buried it and started building a machine designed to make sure no one ever believed the truth. For the next 50 years, that machine would run without pause. It would manufacture doubt as a product, fund scientists to muddy clear evidence, and sit in closed-door meetings using the words cancer and addiction internally, while telling Congress, under oath, that nicotine was not addictive at all. Millions of people would die believing the doubt was real. This is the story of how an entire industry knew for half a century and chose profit over the truth, and the paper trail buried in their own internal documents that finally caught up with them. To understand how this happened, you have to understand what tobacco companies were selling before 1953. Not just a product, but an image. Smoking was glamour. It was the doctor in the advertisement recommending a brand. It was the athlete, the movie star, the soldier on the front line with a cigarette between his fingers. By the early 1950s, over half of American men smoked, and the industry was one of the most profitable in the country. Then came the mouse study, and it wasn't isolated. Within 2 years, multiple independent research groups reached the same conclusion the industry's own scientists had just confirmed. Smoking caused lung cancer. The tobacco companies had a choice: disclose the risk or protect the revenue. In December 1953, the presidents of the major tobacco companies met at the Plaza Hotel in New York. They didn't meet to discuss safety. They met to discuss strategy. And out of that meeting came a public relations campaign that would define the industry for the next 5 decades. Fund friendly research, question the science publicly, and never, under any circumstances, concede that cigarettes cause disease. They hired a PR firm. They created an entire research organization whose real purpose wasn't to find the truth. It was to manufacture the appearance of a debate that internally they already knew was over. That is the moment the cover-up began. The organization the tobacco companies created was called the Tobacco Industry Research Committee, later renamed the Council for Tobacco Research. On paper, it looked like a legitimate scientific body. In practice, it was a shield. The council funded thousands of studies over the following decades. Some were genuine research, but a significant portion was designed around a single strategic goal: generate enough tangential science about genetics, about stress, about anything other than cigarettes, to give journalists and regulators a reason to write. The science is still unsettled, even as the industry's own internal scientists reached the opposite conclusion behind closed doors. Internal memos from this era, later revealed in litigation, show executives referring to doubt itself as the product. One tobacco executive would later write, in a document that became infamous once unsealed, "Doubt is the best weapon against the body of fact that exists in the mind of the general public." Through the 1960s, the Surgeon General's office began building its own case. In 1964, the first Surgeon General's report on smoking and health was released, formally linking smoking to lung cancer and heart disease. It made front-page news across the country. The industry's response wasn't to stop, it was to escalate. New committees, new studies, new spokespeople, all repeating a single message crafted to sound reasonable. More research is needed before we can be certain. They had already been certain for over a decade. By the 1970s, the industry's own scientists knew more than the public could imagine. Internal research had identified not just that cigarettes caused cancer, but the specific mechanism. Nicotine was addictive, and the companies were engineering it that way on purpose. Documents later uncovered in litigation showed tobacco companies manipulating nicotine levels in their products, a practice internally referred to as impact. Freebase nicotine, additives like ammonia, blends specifically designed to increase the speed and strength of nicotine's effect on the brain. This wasn't incidental. It was chemistry, refined over years, aimed at a single outcome: keeping smokers smoking. Internal memos used blunt language that never appeared in public statements. One Brown and Williamson researcher wrote plainly that nicotine is addictive and that the industry was, in effect, in the business of selling nicotine, an addictive drug. Publicly, the story was the opposite. Executives testified to Congress and the press that nicotine wasn't addictive and that smoking was a matter of personal choice, not chemical dependency. The gap between what tobacco companies knew internally and what they said publicly wasn't a matter of interpretation. It was documented, in their own handwriting, in memos never meant to see daylight. It would take decades and a wave of lawsuits before those documents finally did. To understand how this deception held for so long, you have to understand who it was built to convince, not just the public, but the smokers themselves. Nicotine addiction creates a powerful psychological need for reassurance. Smokers who suspected the risks were real still needed a reason to believe otherwise, because quitting was hard and the alternative was frightening. The tobacco industry didn't just exploit that need. They engineered messaging specifically to feed it. Advertising campaigns leaned into doctor endorsements, athletic imagery, and reassuring language, long after internal research confirmed the risks. The goal wasn't to convince a skeptic. It was to give an already worried smoker permission to keep believing what they wanted to believe. Internal industry documents referred to this dynamic directly. Executives understood that a smoker who wanted to quit but couldn't was a smoker who needed a story, and the industry made sure that story was always available. The science isn't settled. Moderation is fine. My own grandfather smoked and lived to 90. This is the same psychological mechanism used by every large-scale deception in this series so far: MLMs, Enron. Give people a reason to believe what benefits them, and most people will take it, even against their own better judgment. The tobacco industry didn't just sell a product. For 50 years, they sold permission. While the public argument played out over decades, a darker pattern was unfolding inside the industry's own walls. Tobacco companies didn't just suppress evidence about disease. They targeted the people most vulnerable to addiction, especially children. Internal marketing documents, later revealed in court, described teenagers as replacement smokers, a term used to describe the customers needed to replace the ones who quit or died. Campaigns built around cartoon-style branding and youth-oriented imagery weren't accidents. Internal research tracked underage smoking initiation rates as a business metric because the industry understood a simple fact: almost no one starts smoking as an adult. If you don't addict someone before 18, you likely never will. The industry also fought, aggressively and repeatedly, against regulation that could have saved lives. They lobbied against warning labels, fought advertising restrictions, and funded political campaigns for decades to delay any law that threatened the business model, even as their own scientists confirmed, internally, exactly what those regulations were trying to prevent. And when whistleblowers inside the industry tried to speak up, they were met with lawsuits, intimidation, and, in some documented cases, campaigns to destroy their credibility and their careers. This wasn't a company protecting a flawed product. It was a decades-long, coordinated effort to keep an entire population addicted to something the industry knew, with certainty, was killing them. The truth didn't come out because the tobacco industry chose to tell it. It came out because the paper trail became impossible to hide. Throughout the 1990s, a series of lawsuits, whistleblower disclosures, and state attorneys' general investigations forced tobacco companies to turn over millions of pages of internal documents, memos, research reports, marketing strategy papers, many of them decades old, and most of them never intended to leave the building. In 1998, that pressure culminated in the Master Settlement Agreement. The major tobacco companies agreed to pay over $200 billion to settle claims brought by dozens of states, restrict certain marketing practices, and release millions of internal documents into the public record. The same documents that would later confirm, in the industry's own words, exactly what they had known since 1953. Individual executives were called before Congress. In one of the most famous moments in the entire saga, the CEOs of the major tobacco companies stood before lawmakers and testified under oath that they did not believe nicotine was addictive. Testimony that internal company documents, already in the public record, directly contradicted. No tobacco executive went to prison. The settlement was civil, not criminal. But the documents themselves became one of the largest public records of corporate deception in American history, a paper trail that outlived every denial the industry ever made. The lie had held for 50 years. The evidence had existed the entire time. The mice were painted with tar in 1953. The cancer showed up within weeks. Everything that followed, the 50 years of denial, the manufactured doubt, the targeting of children, the executives lying under oath, all of it happened after the industry already had the answer. This wasn't a failure to understand the science. It was a decision made deliberately over and over for 5 decades to protect revenue over human life. And it worked, for a while, not because the evidence was unclear, but because doubt is cheap to manufacture and expensive to dismantle. The tobacco industry didn't get caught because they had a change of heart. They got caught because paper doesn't lie, even when the people who wrote it did. Millions of internal pages, never meant to be read outside a boardroom, ended up as the most complete record of corporate deception in American history. The mice were the first ones who knew. It took the rest of the world 50 years to catch up.